with my hand in the way if I put it.
All right.
This is a picture of Mary Pink Cottle.
Lacy Davis. I have grown up and lived here practically all of my life within 10 miles of this place anyway. So I know a lot of the people, and I know a lot of your faces, although I might not know all of your names. The Ezekiel Airship. Back in the book of Ezekiel, a prophet wrote that book about 500 years before Christ was born. And he described in that book a vision that he had of an airship, or a vehicle with 4 wheels, or a wheel on the 4 corners of it. And those wheels had a wheel within a wheel, and it flew through the air. Now, Ezekiel did that twice in his book. And along come about 1848, a boy was born down in Louisiana by the name of Burl Cannon. Now, Burl, before he was 20 years old, was an ordained Baptist minister. He loved his Bible. His family says he was one of the nicest, most courteous people that they knew. And he rarely ever said anything bad about anyone. But I guess you could say that he, in his earlier life or later life, he had a vision. Along sometime before 1900, he envisioned building such a plane, or a plane, that would have the description that was in the book of Ezekiel. Now, it so happens that he was a rather educated man, as well as a man of the Bible, a man of the cloth. He came down to Pine, which is just down the road here, sometime before 1893. We don't know exactly when. We know that he was there because I have a newspaper published at the great city of Lafayette, Texas in 1893, and it gives the Cotton Belt schedule, which goes through Pine, and the same time for Cannon Station was the same as for Pine. So we know he was there at that time. He was a sawmiller by trade. Now, you're going to hear various stories about Reverend Cannon and what church he served. We have no record that he was ever a regular preacher at any church. We do know that he preached in Pine, a little community down south of here who had no church at that time, but every Sunday he preached at the one-room schoolhouse. But in his thoughts and back of his mind, he kept going back to that book of Ezekiel. And today the family still has that Bible which he has, and I have seen it a number of times. And that Bible is worn where his hands have pawed over that scripture describing that airplane. So he built a model, or he built several models. But his latest model, we think, was 1900. He built it in Pine. We don't know that he had a motor in it at that time, an engine. We think that possibly he had visions of a motor, but we have no record showing he did. He brought that model to Pittsburgh in 1901, and he got a few people here in Pittsburgh to decide to form a company to build that Ezekiel airship. Now, understand, I have never called it a plane or an airplane. I did say plane, I believe, a little bit ago. But he never called it an airplane. He called it an airship. Why, I don't know. But if you see the model, which is up in Workshop up here, Works restaurant up here in town, you'll see why he possibly didn't call it a plane. And maybe you can figure out why he called it an airship. But he, together with these people, formed the company, and he had his shop in the upstairs floor of the Pittsburgh Foundry and Machine Shop. Now, it was in the machine shop. A lot of people will tell you it's built in the foundry. The foundry is gone. It was west of the machine shop. Some of you old-timers here might remember it there before it tore it down. But it's built upstairs. And along about 1902 1902 or 1903, during the wintertime, after the airship was built, the story is that that airship was taken out and test flown. We cannot prove it. The granddaughter, who I have been in contact with for a number of years, says that he was afraid that he would be copied. He had gone to Washington to apply for a patent. He had not received a patent. She says that he said there were 2 German spies, 1 French spy, and the Wright brothers themselves came down here to see what he was building. This we cannot prove, but that's the family history. Now, he built the airship and was supposed to take it out and send it to St. Louis. Now there the story varies as to why he was sending it to St. Louis. The first story is that he was taking it up there to put it in the World's Fair, which would not be until 1904. There's another story, and the family says this is the one that's true, that he was taking it up there for refinancing. The people in Pittsburgh were discouraged. He had promised to build a craft which would carry a paying load. Here, a year later, he had nothing to show for it except a little model or a little airship. So, but at any rate, before it got on the flat car, and here again the story varies. One of the employees of the machine shop, who sometimes worked on the airship, and by the way, Mr. Thorsell charged Reverend Cannon for all the work that he did on it, according to the papers we have. But anyway, this employee got into it. Well, at first the employees got it out on a Sunday morning while the Reverend was preaching down at Pine. Okay, now, I knew some of the officials of that church. I knew Mr. Heath. If the church door was open to Methodist Church, Mr. Heath was there. Mr. Hargrove was an official, and if the Baptist Church was open, he was there. And some of the other people, they were church-going people. Mr. Thorsell, if the Baptist Church was open, he was there. So it would sound plausible that that was the case on this particular time. But at any rate, they took the airship out across the field, cranked it up, and this employee got in it, and it began to lift up. It first lurched forward. If you see the airship, the wheels turn, but the wheels themselves would carry it only till it got off the ground. Okay, it lurched forward and got up and more or less drifted for some 160 feet, the family says, but not very high. Now this employee says that it began to vibrate so that he shut the thing off. He was afraid of it. Now, Mr. Thorsell, Morris Thorsell, which is Mr. Thorsell's son, told me before he died, he asked this man, why did it vibrate? He says, well, the power from the motor was supposed to be transmitted to the mechanism by a chain link drive. Now, a chain link drive is what you use on a bicycle, something similar to that, possibly larger. His funds was out. So he goes down to his sawmill and gets one of those chains which pulls his sawdust out from under the saw and pulls it out to the side. Now, my idea of that, and as I recall, it's more or less like the chain on an old fertilizer distributor. Very small, very ineffective way of transmitting power, and that's why it vibrated. Now, the granddaughter, who I've been in contact with, says no, says that man did fly it, but says Reverend Cannon was there because he told my mother he was there, and he wanted to fly it, and because he was 6'4" and weighed over 200 pounds, they would not let him fly. Now, Reverend Cannon didn't want any publicity, so there was no one there with a newspaper. There was nothing to prove it. Mr. Aubrey Swim, who was president of the First State Bank here for many years, and many of you have heard of him, told often about, as a young boy, hearing that they were going to test that airship. He went down and said he sat there and watched that airship go into the air, drift. Mr. Fulton Vickers, A lot of you knew him here. He had a sister lived here. And her son wrote me when this story first got out and said his mother saw that airship fly. Okay, Jean Locke, who lives here now, her mother was Mrs. John Warwick. She too says her mother told her many times that she saw that airship fly. Did it fly? I can't prove it. I don't know. But that's the story. And Pittsburgh is benefiting now from the story after we went and got it and have a historical marker for it. Now, are there any questions you might like to ask that I might answer on this story? Don't ask me to prove anything. Beg pardon? No. The Chamber of Commerce, a number of years ago, had about, I believe it said 20,000 reprints of that copy made. Now, it was signed and everything on it except the person who owned it. Now, where they got this copy was, I happened to have, through the good notions of a former attorney here, Charlie Winkle, he has one of the original stock certificates, and he gave it to me for safekeeping for the Kemp County Historical Committee. I have one of the original stock certificates, and this Chamber of Commerce took off the name that it was issued to, and in their reprint is the same thing they have. And you can go to Chamber of Commerce and get you a copy right now.
This was before the Wright brothers flew?
The story is that the test flight was made in the wintertime, and we have no exact date, of 1902, 1903. Now, the Wright brothers flew, I believe, in September of 1903. So it was sometime before their flight. We, as again we say, we have no definite proof. All we have is the words of these people who say they saw it.
Is the aircraft or the airship, is it preserved?
The airship, on its way to Texarkana, on its way to St. Louis, a strong wind came up when it went through Texarkana, blew it off, and destroyed it. Now, the granddaughter says that Reverend Cannon looked down at the residue of what was left, and he says, God did not will that airship to fly. Now, it's also been said that he said that after a second airship, which he built in 1913, and flew in the Chicago area, crashed.
He flew another one.
The daughter, before she died, Roy Roundtree, the Chamber of Commerce manager here in 1960 something or other, had her here, and he interviewed her, and she said yes, he built one, and it flew in 1913. And Roy Roundtree can tell you that even the guy's name was a big Air Force promoter way back yonder. Now, not too long ago, there was a gentleman from Longview, Texas, came up here, and he saw one of these replicas of the airship, or the certificate. He said, I have one of those at home. And Calvin Van Landingham, the Main Street coordinator, says, well, I'd like to see it. So he made him a Xerox copy of it and brought it up here. And there on that stock certificate was the same picture which we have today of the Ezekiel Airship. But it was another company formed in Longview, Texas, incorporated in Shreveport, Louisiana, under Louisiana laws. I have not pursued this because it did not pertain to Kemp County. But we believe now that we are on the road to something that second airship, the second company that he formed. Any further questions? I don't want to take up all this time here. You got too many people out here. And
Honorary kinsman, I think, because you can talk about as well as we can.
Beg pardon now?
I said, you can talk like we can. I said, we'll make you an honorary Shelby.
Well, I thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Is it still running?
It's still running.
Okay.
Thank you a whole lot, Lacy. This is the replica of the airship is in Warwick's restaurant in Pittsburgh. So if any of you need the instructions on how to get there, why some of us can tell you. And I think at this time we'll let Ann Shelby Ellison tell us a little bit of where we all sort of started from.
Good. All right, how's that?
The people who are gathered here today are the descendants of Cater Atkins Shelby and Mary Pink Caudle. Cater was born in Barber County, Alabama in 1862. His family came to, it was Mount Vernon, wasn't it? Pearly. Okay. In 1869, Mary Pink's family, the Caudles, came to this state in 1841 from Tennessee. The people who are here today are the grandchildren of this union, the grandchildren of Cater Atkins Shelby and Mary Pink Caudle, along with their families, those who could come. Most of them are here. There are only 2 or 3 who could not make it today, and we're sorry that they couldn't. But that's the background of the people that you're looking at today.
So we can all be sort of preserved for posterity and what have you. We'll just take a quick run around and let you state your name and which descendant of the original Shelbys you are, and where do you live now. Just your name and where you live now, and which ones of them. And Betty, you are an in-law. You can go right ahead.
I'm Bob Irby's wife, and he's a descendant of Mary Pink Shelby and Marnus Reese. This is my daughter, Ann.
Ann Nayland and
Ann Nayland. And this is my husband, Ron. We live in Irving.
I'm Ed Ellison. I'm married to Ann Shelby, and she is the daughter of Warren Hall Shelby. And this is my daughter. She'll introduce herself.
I'm Carroll Ellison Conway. Beside me is my daughter, Ty's Corinne Conway, and my son, who is not here, is Warren Hall Conway.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm Bob Ellison, and I'm son of William Ellison and Ann Shelby Ellison. I'm a descendant of Warren Hall Shelby. Yeah, that's right.
Ken Hansen. I'm married to Mary Ann Edelman, who's a what? Daughter of Llewellyn Shelby. Okay. Pass it over to her.
I'm Karen Stevens. This is my husband, Lonnie, and I'm the granddaughter of Llewellyn Shelby.
Yeah. I'm Bill Dorries, and I'm married to Virginia Pink Julian, who is the daughter of Dixie Amanda Shelby.
I'm Lita Shelby Wimpy. I'm the daughter of Cater Lex Shelby.
I'm Mary Ann Edelman Hansen, and I'm the daughter of Llewellyn Shelby.
And I am Edith Julian King, the daughter of Dixie Amanda Shelby Julian.
I'm Edith's sister, Virginia Pink.
Big sister.
I'm 7 years older than she is. And I'm the daughter of, I'm Virginia Pink Julian Dorries, and I'm the daughter of Dixie Shelby.
I'm Ann Shelby Ellison. I am the daughter of Warren Hall Shelby. Mike?
I'm Michael Shelby, and I'm here with my wife Minnie, my son Jeff, and Stephanie, and I'm the son of Carroll Shelby, grandson of Warren Shelby.
I'm Carroll Shelby, sister of Ann Ellison Shelby, Ann Shelby Ellison, and brother, of my sister, and son of Warren Hall Shelby. And this is my grandson, Jeffrey.
I'm Jeffrey Shelby, and I live on 3405 Caruth. In Dallas, yeah.
Thank you. You did better than I did.
I'm Mary Helen Gist Julian, married to William Henry Julian, and this is our son, Paul.
I'm Paul Julian, grandson of Dixie Amanda Shelby Julian. That's my wife, Cindy.
I'm John Irby, son of Bob Irby of the Mary Pink line, and this is my wife, Susan.
I'm Bob Irby, son of Mary Pink Shelby Irby.
I'm Elwin Irby, son of Mary Pink Shelby Irby. Brother to Bob, very proud of it.
I'm Marilyn Shelby Suhanic, and I'm the daughter of Cater Lex Shelby Sr. and the sister of Cater Lex Shelby Jr. and the mother of Lex Shelby Hutchins.
I'm Lex Shelby Jr., son of Cater Lex Shelby Sr.
I'm Karen Morgan, his granddaughter. Sherry Morgan's my mother.
I'm Keith Julian, and I'm here with my wife Brenda, here beside me, and my son Caleb, and we live in Ellsbury, Missouri, and I'm the grandson of Dixie Amanda Shelby.
I'm Martia Butler Irby, wife of Elwin Irby, and we live in Florence, Alabama.
I'm Melba Shelby. Lex Shelby is my husband, and this girl up here is my granddaughter.
I'm Sherry Morgan. I'm Lex Shelby Jr.'s daughter, and he is Lex Shelby Sr.'s son, so that's my granddaddy. And this is my husband.
Jerry Morgan.
And my daughter back there.
I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm Lex Shelby's Jr.'s granddaughter.
Who? Okay, I'm William Julian, a descendant.
Wait a minute, I'll shut you off there. Florence, Alabama. Who's there?
Right here.
Are you acquainted with the comptroller at the hospital over there? K. Harris Dugan? I believe Deegan. K. Harris Deegan.
No, don't happen to be.
Some of my wife's distant relatives.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Brendan, I'll go back there.
I knew you were Shelby all the way, and now you're going to be Shelby, Julian. There were 13 of the original, and I guess unduplicated first cousins in this group. And Jimmy Shelby, son of Lex Shelby, is not here, and Cater Shelby, son of Charles Shelby, is not here. And this bunch has been known among themselves. When you go, you don't have to know anything. You don't learn anything when you're there. You can't hear anything what's said. And they all talk at once and don't know when to stop and all of this kind of stuff. And what we thought we might do today would be to, for some of us from any of the generations, recall any of the tales or happenings or things that happened back when we were kids and since then. And it doesn't make any difference who you tell it on. They're probably going to tell one on you anyway. But I know that Carroll spent the summer with us one time out at Leesburg, and he and I were hoeing sweet potatoes. And it was a hot day. We got out under a persimmon sprout with the old water jug covered with some toe sacking to keep it cool, and we drank some water and sat there and talked. And I said, Carroll, let's go back to work. No, let's rest a while. So we rested a while longer. And I said, well, let's go back to work. And he says, no, let's rest a little while. I said, Carroll, we're going to never get through with this potato patch if we don't get started. He said, it doesn't make any difference, William. I heard Uncle Henry tell you when we got through with this patch, we were going right over there and start on the other one. So I don't know how long it took us to get through with that potato patch. The summer before that, it must have been in 37 because Uncle Hall had a 37 Willis, and I had I guess the good news and bad news is that the bad news, I went riding with Carroll. The good news, he got me there safe and back. But we went down the highway, but we went to Leesburg for something, and he had to show me that 37 Willis would get 65 miles an hour in second gear down that highway. And it did. So any of you that have anything bad to say about each other, or good, or what, why, Lex, you ready to start one?
Carroll, you can't leave, Carroll. You got more stories. In 1936, we were visiting at the Texas Centennial and at the home of Uncle Hall's and Ann's and Carroll's. And when you mentioned this little card he had, we got in it and happened to have a bundle of firecrackers. He was driving down through the farmer's market, and I was tossing firecrackers out the back. We didn't get caught, but we got home back all right. And another story that DeWitt Shelby told me in a cassette tape he cut for me was that when he was a boy visiting in the home of our parents, they were Uncle Hall, Uncle Charles, and my father, Lex Shelby, were wanting to show him how to shoot a shotgun. So they did. They put him up on a post and showed him how to fire the shotgun, and then when he was on his back off of the post, he found out how to shoot the shotgun.
Everybody here probably knows 3 Carroll Shelby stories, and I guess Carroll can deny this one if he wants to. I was told this. I didn't see it happen, but I was told that when he was about a junior or senior in high school, he asked a guy he said, I have a date this weekend. It's a Saturday, Sunday. Can I borrow your, about like 1938 Ford or something, for my date? And the guy said, okay. And he read in the paper the next day that Carroll Shelby won a dirt track race up in Oklahoma driving a 1938 Ford car and was thoroughly struck by that. Now, Carroll, you have a right to deny that if that didn't happen.
In about 1939, we lived in Maud, Oklahoma, and Lita, Jimmy, Lex, and I were all out in the churchyard playing, and we looked up and a plane was flying over, very, very low, and we could see somebody waving down to us. Well, there was the talk of the town because very few planes ever flew over Maud, Oklahoma. Well, none probably. And so we went ahead excited because whoever was in that plane was waving to us. Found out later, after we had received a letter from Uncle Hall, that was Carroll. He'd taken a CAP plane and had just decided to go for a flight, and he found all of us. The church was the biggest building in town, and he found us down there. I wonder if he remembers that. Found us down there, and he's waving to us, and then my daddy said, he might be in trouble for taking that plane. Don't tell anybody he's your cousin.
One of the things to play with when we came here to Aunt Dixie's and Williams and everybody were rubber guns. And these were violent things. The rubber were inner tubes that had been cut up, and you could put them on these long sticks, guns with a clothespin on the back, and they could really sting you. Well, Lex was here one time, and we were running around the house, and we got on opposite sides of some shrubbery there, and he was aiming right at me and I was aiming at him, and I shot him, and it scared me to death. I thought I'd put his eye out there. So anyway, we thought that was fun.
on the things that happened there, well, I remember a corncob fight. Cater was visiting us, and we were at the barn, and a bunch of the neighborhood relatives and non-relatives and kids were there, and Cater says, let's take them on. So I said, okay, we'll take them on. So I don't know how many of y'all were in on it, but Cater and I took on the crowd, And we had an old horse that had bad teeth, and you could get the cobs out of his trough, and they would be much heavier and wetter than the others. And Horace Reynolds, I think, knew where that trough was. And Cater made the mistake of sticking his head up, and Horace peeled his head with a slobbery corn cob, and I think Cater was ready to suggest another game.
I felt very fortunate in that I often had my birthday at Aunt Dixie's in August when we were visiting there, and it was a good place to celebrate a birthday. Aunt Mary would prepare cakes in which she would put a ring that meant you were going to get married, or a penny, I don't remember exactly what that stood for, a dime that meant if you were going to get rich. We all had these special little surprises in the cake that you might bite your teeth on the first time or two. One time we had been eating the cake, had just a little bit of it left, and took it with us to Uncle Hall's, and the dime was found there at their house. I think it was Carroll. I think it was Carroll who found the dime. One of the experiences that I remember was in the summer of 1942. My dad was in service as an Army chaplain then. Lex and Cater and Carroll were all in service. My mother went to Georgia to visit Dad, and Marilyn, Jim, and I all had a month to spend with Aunt Mary and Aunt Dixie and their children. This was a great vacation for us. One Sunday morning, it was too rainy for us to go to church, to go to Sunday school and church. I was 15 then. I could remember missing Sunday school and church one time in my life, and I didn't want to ruin my record. We couldn't go to Leesburg, 2 miles away on muddy roads that day, so we decided to have Sunday school at Aunt Dixie's house. Marilyn was the pianist, Edith was the song leader, I gave the devotional, Pink was the Sunday school teacher, and Jimmy and William were part of the audience. They were pulled in from out of doors. That's right. And as Aunt Dixie had a little switch in her hand, I remember, and just as Pink was reading from the Beatitudes, "Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake," Aunt Dixie was coming down over William's Jimmy's shoulders with a switch. I don't think they were persecuted for righteousness' sake, but I've always remembered that. I imagine they felt they were being persecuted for righteousness' sake. I imagine you did. I imagine you did, but we always enjoyed those visits.
One of the famous things that we used to hear about Aunt Dixie's house was the blue hole. And one time, whoops, do I dare tell things? I never went to the blue hole because I was too young. But there was a story.
You'd have seen a bunch of fannies down there with no clothes on if you had, because that's where William lived.
Bob visited our house one time when he was a young teenager. It was just for a few days. And each day, my mother, first day or two, mother would say, "Bob, do you need time in the bathroom for bath?" And he'd say, "No, I went to the blue hole at Aunt Dixie's." The second day, the same thing happened. And by the next day, she said, "Bob, do you need time in the bathroom to take a bath?" He said, "No, I'm going back to Aunt Dixie's and I can go in the blue hole."
Oh, dear. One of the things I remember by the time that when the Lexys would come, and Jimmy I don't remember exactly how old he would have been, but anyway, Uncle Lex would put his arm up on the car door and let Jimmy slide through so he wouldn't have to go through the kissing line.
Some of you have a tape that Lex sent some of us that DeWitt Shelby made, and there was one small error in that. He told about one severe winter when we had a pretty cold house then, and he said that our mother put us around and fed us all out of a bowl of oatmeal, one spoon at a time like little birds. But I have to correct that. It was Aunt Mary C. feeding her little ones because they weren't quite as used to freezing as that. And she'd give one a spoonful, and then she'd give the other one a spoonful, and on around like little birds.
Well, I don't know why I don't remember anything outstanding and as funny as these things. I just remember that there was no place like Aunt Dixie's. No place in this world like Aunt Dixie's until the very last. I loved to go there. The only thing I think of is something I was told when we lived at Leesburg. Now, we left Leesburg when Carroll was 7 years old and I was 3. Daddy...
Okay.
That's okay.
That's pretty close.
I was 4. I wasn't 4 till after we went to Dallas. Let me see now. Where was I? Oh, I know. Daddy carried a mail route in what he called his hack, you know. When the roads were bad, he'd go in the hack instead of the car. And Aunt Dixie lived, what, about 2 miles from us there at Leesburg? And Carroll wanted to go to Aunt Dixie's. But Daddy wasn't supposed to carry any riders in his hack because it was a government vehicle. And so he put stamps on Carroll and mailed him. Not too legal, but it worked.
Well, there's been a lot of memorable days in my life, but the one that I remember the most vividly was the day my sister was born. We lived at Grandpa Julian's house, and the day that Mother was delivering her there at the place at Grandpa Julian's, I remember that I crawled up under the house because I wasn't getting as much attention as I wanted. And my daddy had to crawl up under there and get me, and he switched me all the way out. Then I ran off because I got switching down across the cotton patch down in front of the place. And Aunt Rena came after me with a switch, and I thought it was 1.5 miles. When I ride by there now, I can't believe it's only about 100 yards that she switched me home. Because Huh?
Aunt Rena worked with us, worked for Mother.
Aunt Rena was the black lady that took care of us and was just like part of the family. You know, we used to love those people. Well, that wasn't the end of my spankings. I went down, I forget whether they sent me down to Lon Stewart's when the going got rough there and the water got hot, I guess, or Miller Finn's. But I remember I was playing with 2 or 3 kids, and they had a little miniature stove. Well, I went out and got some horse droppings, and I was cooking them in a miniature stove when the wife came out there and caught me feeding it to these little kids that were about a year younger than I, and they thought it was so good. And I remember the paddling I got and being taken home, and my little sister was born by that time.
One that happened, this was at home before the days of indoor plumbing. Okay, there'll be a bunch more. But anyway, this was before the days of indoor plumbing in our house, and it got to be a sort of a cool night, and Edith's husband was there, and Bill Dory's was there, and a bunch of us there. And about 9:30, 10 o'clock, why, somebody says, it was this November, sort of a little bit cool, but nothing like cold weather. And Grady or Bill or somebody says, I better go check the antifreeze in my car. So somebody else said, well, I better go check mine. And here it was 50, 60 degrees, and we all decided to go check the antifreeze. Well, about most of us started out, and Bob, in his sweet innocence, says, it ain't gonna freeze tonight. Who has another one over here?
This was at the Texas Centennial in 1936, and I've heard Edith and Pink tell this so many times I don't think it's true, so I'm quoting them. But it was Depression time then also, and my allowance for the entire Centennial was $0.10. Well, Edith and Pink tell me that I dropped that dime in the garbage can somehow, and they had to dig in there and find it for me. Is that really true? Uh-oh.
We will now have the second episode.
We have the true version.
I didn't remember why anybody was digging in the garbage can. I just remember that we were having our picnic lunch about that time, and we were all sitting around around there eating, and somebody else was digging in the garbage.
That was when it was today it was 110 degrees, and Jimmy and I were barefooted, and I don't know how many more were, but I remember running from the shade of one trash can to the other one because the pavement was hot.
And Anne Marie wanted to know if we wanted to go to the state fair on this trip here, and I said no. I'm still tired from that other one. But once, when I was going up to Aunt Dixie's, my nearest thing to being sinful at the time was smoking grapevines, not something worse than that, more powerful than that. No. You know, I was a saint back then, but I thought that was being. I'd smoked grapevines and drunk Dr. Pepper, you know, and that was pretty worldly. But I decided to move up and was going to make a corncob pipe and try to put a grapevine in it there. And so I didn't know till later what I had said, but I heard Pink about 6 months later telling somebody else, and I came in with 2 corn cobs in my hand, and I said, you know what I'm going to do with these?
I could comment on that one some more, but I better not, because I don't know what color they were, because they were. I think some of the in-laws that have suffered through some of these and probably have heard some of these more than we have who have told them. Do some of them want to retaliate or repeat one? Melba? Melba, Marty, I mean.
I had the pleasure of being at Aunt Dixie's one time soon after Elwin and I were married. It was a fascinating visit because all the cousins, all the Shelbys were talking at one time, and every in-law was sitting around there with their mouth closed, and everybody, I wondered who is listening to whom. All Shelbys were talking, everybody else just sitting there looking.
Lunsford Florence store at Leesburg was more than a tradition. It was almost Leesburg back when there was about, 5 or 6 stores and post office and what have you. And Carroll would go down and sit in Lunsford store. And they had nail kegs there, but the pot-bellied stove was back toward the hardware department, and there was always a bunch of nail kegs sitting around. And somebody had moved a full keg of nails up close to the stove. And so Carroll went in and sat on that keg that's full of nails, and after a little bit, I guess one side got hot, and so he decided to move back. And this is the Lunsford and the rest of them there was telling it, said that Carroll got a hold of that nail keg, shook it and couldn't move it. He tried to guide it again, couldn't move it, and said, damn, somebody nailed it to the floor. Melba, you bound to have one.
I don't know. Speak now. You got to.
You don't have to talk, you can just have one.
It's been said 2 or 3 times here about how all the Shelbys talk and how much everybody couldn't wait to get to go back to Aunt Dixie's again. I don't guess Uncle Henry ever felt bad about it being called the Dixies. It was always called the Dixies, and there was called the Henrys or the Julians, but everybody understood. But Aunt Dixie was such a sweet person, and Marty has heard me tell this several times. She'll probably wonder why I'm telling it again, but some people may not have known. William and I pulled a sneaky one night. We had homemade ice cream. and so about 8:30, 9 and 9 o'clock, everybody got under their feather mattresses and so forth and got out on out on the porch, screened-in porch, to try to start going to sleep, you know. And about 9:30 or 10 o'clock, William said, "Let's slip back in the kitchen and see if there's some more ice cream in that freezer." And so he and I went in there, and sure enough, we found some. We scraped it and scraped, you know, got it as quiet as we could be. Nobody heard us. We were so proud about that. Got back in his room, and Bob was there, and we were going to go. So we were trying to go to sleep, and about that time, dear sweet Aunt Dixie came in and said, "You boys want some more ice cream?" said, we'll slip in there. If nobody hears us, we'll try to get you some more. So William and I, of course, we didn't dare tell her we'd already been in there. So we said, okay. So we went again. And she said, "Well, darn, there's not near as much here as I thought there was."
She said, "If I'd known there was no more than this, I wouldn't have called you." Aunt Mary and Uncle Marnus took the Julian kids. I think Pink didn't go on that trip to Maud, Oklahoma. But this one they lived in Maud in the top story of the church. And the church had a basement in the bottom of it, which had a place to play shuffleboard. I'd never seen a shuffleboard, but I learned to play shuffleboard. And Aunt Mary C. made the mistake of trying to fill Elvin and us some on waffles. And that's the first waffle I ever saw. And we worked her till about dinner, I think. But she had one little iron. But that church made a vivid impression. We went to, our son Charlie is a minister, and we went to see him first time after he was in the ministry that we went to see him. On the way up there, why, I dreamed about that church, I guess, because I dreamed driving up to a big red church building where Charlie was minister. Charlie came down out to the parking lot and says, "You all get out." And I said, "Charlie, we're glad to be here, but I'm going to have to go get in the motel." And he says, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I can't sleep but an hour at a time in church." And
as I was making plans to come here and was excited after, well, I'd had 4 calls from Bob and Betty Irby one weekend and calls from Elvin and William too in preparation for the trip. And my husband, I heard telling his sister, "Lita has such an exalted opinion of her kinfolks." And then he said to his sister, "We lived close to ours, didn't we?" On one occasion, I remember hearing Dad and Aunt Mary laughing as we had gone from Atlanta, Texas to Aunt Dixie's about a comment that Marilyn had said. She said, she had said to Daddy and Aunt Mary, "When we go visiting, we get to see cousins, and all you get to see is brothers and sisters."
On the reference of the Blue Hole a while ago, the Blue Hole is geographically located about a half mile from the house. It's in Camp Branch, not much bigger than this. The water is real cold, and it's blue when you go in, and you're blue when you come out. And that's how it was named. So it was a rather historic event. There'd be mud fights and games of bully gator and what have you that got rather interesting. Betty, what would you like to? You don't want to retaliate? And Bob says it kept you clean for 3 days, guaranteed.
Pink and I are so overprotective, we have neither one ever seen the Blue Hole.
Well, it's the people that partake in it are more interesting to see than the ones that are in it. I don't think there's, I do remember one time there were some swimsuits down there. I missed it. If I'd have known it, I'd have been there.
Stories, I think I'll get out of this family.
Bill Dory is filing a petition to withdraw fellowship, I think, from the group. I think we ought to vote on it. We might let him go.
I remember one time when I was at the Grand Prix of Holland and my engine blew up and I was going around a turn, about 175 mile an hour turn, and oil got on my back wheels and I spun out and I was going right over going over a cliff, and I thought it was going to hit on top of my head. But the car popped around and straightened up. And I remember that night wondering what it would hurt, what it's going to feel like if my head had hit that concrete about 175 miles an hour. And if he thinks that Cater's the only one that ever got skinned with one of them corn cobs, William was the absolute authority on finding them that had been soaking in that cow manure and urine. And he didn't get them, William didn't get his out of where that old cow was eating them, I'll tell you that. and he seldom missed. And I remember thinking, it probably wouldn't have hurt any worse than one of them cobs of Williams if my head had hit that concrete.
This is an event at a later date in our time. Bill had taught Charlie and Keith how to squirrel hunt. And along comes Paul 5 years later to learn how. So Bill took him hunting. And the woods were dry. And Bill was several years older. So he comes in with his tongue hanging out from taking Paul first time squirrel hunting to teach him a little bit about it. Bill says to me, he said, I'm just getting too old to teach these kids how to hunt. Said they can't keep their, he had told Paul to, two things you have to pick up when you squirrel hunt. One's your feet and one's your lower lip. And he said, I'm just getting too old to teach them.
Paul got even with me though the other day. We started down there to get some squirrels that were getting in the pecans, and we stood at a place and looked a little bit and decided he'd go this way and I'd go this way, and I started here and Paul got about there. Paul turned around and said, pick up your feet and your lip. He remembers.
No, I don't.
No.
Let me tell an Uncle Lex story here.
Okay.
Uncle Lex used to tell this story about Wascom is a town at that time was quite small on the Louisiana-Texas border there, and he witnessed this side here. There was a water tank for the train. The train track ran along parallel to the road there, and he was going to turn to cross the track, and he had to stop because the train was there. And this big arm on the water tank comes down, and you fill up the water tank on the train. And all was going well. The train was stopped there, and they filled it up. But then it started overflowing, and they couldn't get the arm back up. Now this was summertime, and all the windows of the train were down. So they decided, well, we can't just sit here. We've got to go on. And so the conductor inside the train started going through and closing the windows. He pushed them up to close the window. They raised that way. And he was doing all right, but he couldn't close the windows as fast as the train was beginning to move. And he said there he saw on the last car the conductor was not ever going to make it, and this man was asleep with his just leaning back like this right in the window, and here came this big sludge of water, bunch of whatever, tank of water just covered him up there, and Uncle Lex was the only one that witnessed it. He just
Well, we better have another one too. We'll have to sing a hymn and depart. We still got tape on there. On this tape, if the ones of you that are interested in securing a copy, and as many copies as you want to secure and destroy, we're still going to keep one or two. Well, the original is going in a bank box. But the ones of you that are interested in tape, they will be available at a nominal price, and contact me, and then I'll work with Lacy on it, and we'll have tapes for his...
It's all right if we contact Lacy so we cut out the middleman.
Well, no, the middleman is the middleman is very much in this. So, well, I do you the best I can.
Can we switch it for
I don't think this meeting would be complete without a Uncle Charles story. He was had a great sense of humor and a great wit, and just thoroughly loved everybody, and everybody he met liked him, I think, except possibly his employers once in a while, because he could make a guy so mad so quick you couldn't hardly believe it. And I remember one thing that Cater told me on the phone about 3 years ago. I had never heard this story before. Carroll may have heard it because it pertains to Uncle Hall, Carroll's father, Hall. But the granddaddy, Mr. Shelby, the mother of these people had passed away, and then he later married a lady from over in Mississippi, over in Alabama, and frankly, it was not a very happy marriage, in all honesty. But he was too nice to do anything about it, so he let the family stayed together all these years, even though it wasn't a very happy marriage. But anyway, Granddad Shelby had run for some office, judge or something, just a piece, and had been elected once or twice, and finally got defeated one time by just 5 or 6 or 7 votes or something. And he was upset about having lost the race, and his wife, whose name I can't recall right now, Aunt Mattie just blew her stack about how dumb he was for running. How did you ruin her life by running for this race and losing it? And somebody had threatened him, and Charles said, I never felt so sorry for anybody in my life. And there stood Hall, Brother Hall, Carroll's father, out on the front porch with a shotgun, and said, I'll shoot anybody that comes in this yard at the time. But the other great one is that Uncle Charles could always imitate people and wind up making somebody mad. And he and somebody were at a railroad station one time, and he decided they'd get off in a corner and he'd say, and people look around a bit. And they'd look around again, and he'd say, I believe he came from over there. So, and then he'd move over here and say, and they'd go look under the building, and got under the railroad, under the station and all that, got the railroad people looking and so forth. And so forth. And so it just got there. Yeah, he said, I think it's in there. And they were about ready to try to take look under the floor, try to crawl around under there, And then he said, I got a little too close. I did it one more time. And this policeman or somebody came over and said, let me hear you do that again. He said, I didn't think we were going to get out of there. I don't know who he was with.
Uncle Charles also said he was somewhere and he had a slow-talking porter, Page, Mr. Horace Pierce, and it sort of went on too. What else do? Who's next?
Go ahead and say it.
Anybody back here? Well, Carol and all the rest of you, I think we've had a real good time. We appreciate getting together at your place, and it'll be another weekend before we can all get back again. So, does anybody have a word, even a kind word, before we go? And
Ann and Helen put it on. We might have to leave if we think it right now. we don't leave yet.
Lacy, we thank you for your patience and indulgence for putting up with this, and you don't have to tell anybody where you've been or what you've heard.